once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. Could you please introduce yourself, talk about yourself a little bit?
Yes, hi, good night, everybody. Welcome to class, or welcome to the meeting. My name is Luis Canas. I'm a professor at Ohio State University, but I did not start here. In fact, my journey is similar to many international students that it starts with you studying, getting a degree in a university somewhere in Latin America or anywhere in the world. I got my degree from a university in Honduras that we call Zamorano University. It's small college, about I would say 1,200 students, all related to agriculture. And I went there for about five years, and I got my BS in agriculture with a major in crop protection, or plant protection is known in some other areas, and with a minor in economics, or somewhat similar to that. And then at the time when I was finishing my, at that place, then you do a thesis, or what we call an honors thesis. And interestingly enough, we were just talking with Renato about fall armyworm. I did it in fall armyworm, actually, control, back in the day. And there was a professor from Purdue University that was doing his sabbatical. This is a time that some professors take to spend time on another country. So he was there. He was a professor from Purdue University, and he and I started talking because he had done some work on that area, on fall army work control. And he got interested, and he said that if I was interested in pursuing grad studies, which at the time I wasn't even thinking of, but I was curious.
Mm-hmm.
I already had a good level of English, so we always converse in English with him. So I think that was part of why he got interested.
But how do you guys find each other?
Well, he was at the university. He was doing his sabbatical at Zamorano. And the way it happened is I had read some of his papers, and so I had seen him. I had seen him at the university, and so I made an appointment and went to talk to him to ask him questions that related to the work that I was doing at Zamorano. And that got to more discussions, more meetings, and that's what he said. If I was interested in maybe pursuing a master's degree. In the end, I was interested. I applied, and I'll explain what is necessary nowadays to apply. And then I got an assistantship to go to Purdue University and start a master's program. My wife, we got married before I came to the U.S. and she did something very similar. And once I was here and I began doing research, I loved it. And that, of course, led to continuation to a PhD. After I got my PhD from Purdue University, I spent about 3 years at the University of Arizona doing something that we call a postdoc, basically gaining experience on the job. And after that, I began looking for jobs. When I graduated with my PhD, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a professor or if I wanted to work in industry. Both attracted me a lot. And it ended up that I applied for jobs when I was at the University of Arizona. And I was lucky enough to get the job here at Ohio State. And now I've been here at Ohio State for about 17 years.
17 years.
So, yeah.
Can you allow me
Yes.
so they can translate?
Yes.
Bom, pessoal, primeiramente, boa noite a todos. Obrigado por estarem aqui. Hoje estamos fazendo uma quarta-feira, né? Um pouquinho diferente. O Dr. Canas estava contando a trajetória dele. Ele veio de Honduras, onde ele estava fazendo a graduação. Na graduação, ele estava fazendo pesquisa com controle biológico de Spodoptera, e veio um professor da Purdue University, para a universidade dele em Honduras. E como ele tinha um pouco de inglês e esse professor trabalhava com uma área similar a ele, eles começaram a conversar, e esse professor convidou o Canas para vir fazer mestrado na Purdue. Ele fez mestrado, fez o pós-doutorado, e ainda na faculdade ele começou a aplicar para diferentes trabalhos. Ele falou que não sabia se ele queria ir para a indústria, ou para a pesquisa, ou para a universidade. E aplicando, ele conseguiu uma vaga como professor na Ohio State University, onde ele está nos últimos 17 anos. E ele vai mostrar parte desse processo para vocês. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Canas.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I guess I'm going to talk to you about how to study abroad or how to pursue that. And I guess I'll try to share the screen, although I think I need your, to
Yes,
give me
I need to make you the host,
co-host.
but please give me the title of host back after
Yeah,
that.
instead of making me host, then you can make me co-host instead, and that way you retain the power as well.
I don't have the possibility here yet.
Oh, okay. Go ahead then.
I just want to let you know because I have done that before and the person left the meeting and then the meeting was over.
Yeah, yeah,
But
I understand. All right, so great. So now I have it, and okay. By now then everybody should be looking at my screen, and just give me a second here because I want to make sure I can see if there are any questions or if I can see you here. All right, great. So yes, so I will give you in some detail what I think based upon my experience are the steps that you need to take. This is different from university to university, although the main steps are similar. And I will be stopping at various points to answer any questions. Okay.
pessoal, tiverem perguntas, pode mandar ali no chat ou perguntar para o Canas que ele vai responder.
Correct. And so a little bit of the outline. First, I'll talk about the different programs. How do you find opportunities, which is a big part of it. What you need to do and have ready. The difference between research programs and professional programs. A little bit about funding because it comes in various ways. And then the timing to apply. And if we have time, then I'll go and talk a little bit about internships, okay? And I do have an example, but I'll show you that in a moment.
Okay.
Let me start with programs. In general, if you're looking for studying here in the US, then it's no different than in Brazil. There will be BS level programs. And then after that, then you go to master's and PhD programs. I will concentrate most of my discussion on MS and PhD programs. Some of the steps are quite similar, but the reality is, obviously, Brazil has really great universities. There are ways to get BS degrees, and it's very difficult to obtain funding for those kind of programs. It's a lot easier to obtain funding for master's and PhD programs, and that's just the reality. I'll talk to you about the preparation, what you need to do, some of the necessary documents, as I mentioned before, a little bit about the timing, and understand a little bit the funding, okay? All right, so let me start right there on how do you find opportunities, okay? We'll go into the requisites later, but how do you find opportunities? I see a lot what we call cold messaging, which is you're interested in an area, you find a professor somewhere, and then you shoot them an email. I would say that rarely works because I do receive every week, sometimes 5-10 messages from students looking for a master's and PhD. And the reality is you cannot, I mean, both accept so many people. And secondly, we need more information to engage with people rather than just a message, right? So I would say, I know that some people might have had success this way, but I have not seen it working. And if you're sending a message to inquire about opportunities, it might be best to start with the department that you are inclined to apply, because departments have contact persons that are required to provide you with information. And they might tell you every department is different, okay? I see in the chat there are some things. I don't know if there are questions, Renato.
No, just some slides that I'm adding to the.
Okay, great. Okay, one way. So I was mentioning that one other way to find opportunities is to do internships. I'll come back to that in a moment. Sometimes you can respond to requests of applications. Like, for example, sometimes universities are looking for people in a certain area, and then you respond to those. Okay, I'll get more into that.
Okay.
Renato, you wanted to comment on that.
No, my question was, how can they find if the university is looking for a candidate? Where can they find that?
Yeah, the best way is to contact the department itself. If they have positions available, they'll let you know.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if you go to professional societies, like in my case, the one I'm very familiar with is the Entomological Society of America. They have a board of opportunities or a webpage, and you can go there. Many universities post their opportunities there. Okay. And so that's kind of a way to get that. But probably the best ones, or the best way to find these opportunities, is through what we call networking. And this is through your professional contacts. Okay, so for example, let's say you are at your university, and even though you're at the BS level, then you have teachers, maybe you're doing a project with somebody, maybe a professor has asked you to concentrate on doing some kind of research, maybe not detailed research, but maybe some kind of manuscript. Develop a good relationship with this person, because this person might have contacts in universities abroad, like in the US, and they might introduce you to a person that might have an opportunity. So that's what I call networking. It's so very important. And Renato knows this because obviously he has a really good network from his work. For example, Renato and I met each other a long time ago, and even though he's changed jobs, we maintain this relationship quite well, and that helps tremendously. Okay, so networking is probably the best way to get opportunities applying at different positions. The other way, and this might be a little bit more difficult but possible, is to attend conferences. Brazil has really strong professional societies. If you attend the meetings of that professional society, that might lead to you understanding labs that collaborate with your university, with your department, with your advisor. And that again leads to opportunities, okay? Better yet, not just attend the meetings, but go in and give presentations, compete, okay? And so on those places, introduce yourself, not just go and compete and that's it, mingle just with students. No, use the opportunity to introduce yourself. Maybe a professor is there and help you introduce you to other people. And through that, then you begin to develop your network, and that could lead to potential opportunities. I don't know, Renato, if you want to expand on that.
Yes, I do. Probably let's do every slide that you do, and by the end of the slide, I get some minutes to.
Correct, I'll do that.
Então, pessoal, ali são as maneiras como você pode encontrar as oportunidades. A primeira que ele pontuou seria cold messaging, seria cold de frio, como assim? Você abordar do nada, arranjar, de alguma maneira, ver o e-mail do professor e mandar um e-mail do nada. Ele falou que ele recebe mais ou menos uns 5 e-mails assim por semana. Ele fala que é muito inefetivo, porque você tem que conhecer a pessoa para você poder apostar na pessoa. Então, ele sugeriu, ao invés de você mandar um e-mail para um professor, comece pelo departamento de entomologia da Universidade de Ohio, departamento de solos da Universidade do Arizona, departamento de hidroponia da Universidade do Texas. Então, vai para o departamento te aloca para o professor. O intercâmbio é uma ótima maneira, ele vai voltar nesse ponto. Ele falou responder a applications, a propostas, a abertura de vagas. Eu perguntei, mas como que você vai ver que tem uma vaga aberta? Ele falou, novamente, veja no departamento, ou em, por exemplo, sociedades. Eu até escrevi ali, Entomology Society of America, Sociedade Americana de Entomologia. Quando eles estão procurando por algum pesquisador, alguém para fazer mestrado em qualquer universidade que seja associada com a Sociedade Americana de Entomologia, vai estar postado lá. Então, procure no Google, Sociedade Americana de Entomologia, Sociedade Americana de Solos, Sociedade Americana de Patologia, qual for a área do teu interesse. A outra, que o Roger falou, networking, né? Conhecendo pessoas, um conhece o outro e vai indicando, ou quem indica, que a gente conhece no Brasil, ainda é muito efetivo, porque você vai ter um maior grau de confiança. E algo que ele pontuou, que é muito interessante, participar de conferências. Né? Eu, por exemplo, eu participei do Congresso Brasileiro de Ciências do Solo em Gramado, e lá foram palestrantes do mundo todo. Na época eu não tinha inglês, mas o que o Canas falou, se você não estiver fazendo uma apresentação de um banner, de um slide, a gente tem banner às vezes, né? Vai até os apresentadores, introduza você mesmo e converse com eles. Principalmente se eles estiverem na mesma área que você está pesquisando. Ali você cria o networking, ele te conhece, daí ele pode chamar você para vir para cá trabalhar com ele, que foi o que aconteceu com o Canas. Pessoal, se tiver alguma pergunta, por favor, perguntem, ele está aqui para isso.
Thank you, Renato. Yes, and yes, please ask questions as he mentioned.
You understand Portuguese, don't you?
I do. I'll do a little bit because of my Spanish, but when you go fast, I get lost. So I'll catch a few things.
All right.
One thing that I didn't mention is the use of social media. For example, Facebook or even better, LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
You have to develop your LinkedIn profile. This is the professional social media outlet. And it is very important that you maintain it well. It's like your CV online. You need to maintain it well. But here's where those introductions are important, because it's not very often that you will send a request and somebody professionally will accept that request. Oftentimes, they will only accept you if they know you. And that means that you have introduced yourself to them at some point. But slowly but surely, you begin developing that network. Now, Facebook is more, it can be used both for professional and personal aspects. But I will tell you this. If you have a personal Facebook page where you have added a lot of things that may not be completely appropriate, or that you have a lot of pictures of you partying or a lot of things like that, then do not use that account at all, okay? Because a lot of people check before they admit somebody anywhere, they check those profiles. In fact, the LinkedIn sometimes is a requirement in job applications. So always be mindful about that, be careful, and use social media wisely. Okay, that's kind of the new trend and the new way of doing that. Okay. All right. Then I go into the core of the discussion today. All right. Let's say that you've already obtained a BS and you're going to pursue a master's or a PhD. And this is, again, usually we're talking about the sciences. It applies to other areas, but this is what I will explain. If you go to a master's program, we're talking, at least here in the US, about 2 to 2.5 years worth of work, where you will take classes, but also you will do a thesis. This is called a research program, okay? This is the most common one, and I'll tell you why in a moment. If you go to a PhD, that means that you already have a master's degree. Then that will take you anywhere from 4 to 4.5 years, sometimes 5. And yes, you do take classwork, although maybe not as much as you do when you're in a master's program. And you concentrate a lot of your work on your dissertation, which is basically the body of work that you put together based upon the research goals that you have set up with both your advisor and with your committee. There is another option that is more common nowadays, okay? It's the combined program of master's and PhD. The reason for this is that more and more universities feel more inclined to give more money to those that are going to go into a PhD program. Now, there are advantages. The biggest one is that you save time. You, instead of taking about 6 to 7 years, you end up taking 5.5 to 6 years. So you might say 1 year, okay? The biggest issue is the commitment. You really need to know that that is the area that you like. And it doesn't mean that you will do exactly the same thing for all these years. No, you can have a conversation with your potential advisor about the big area that you want to study. And maybe you study a couple of ideas, one that you develop in 2 years and the next one that feeds off of that. So there are multiple ways to do this, but the commitment is there. There are very specific rules about how to do this. And some of them, and this is a question that you always need to ask, some of them will allow you, say in 2-3 years, you realize, well, this was not for me to do a PhD, but you might have done enough work to obtain a master's degree and maybe switch programs, okay? But this is a conversation that has to happen early on with your advisor. And that's the one thing I didn't mention here, but it will always be present on any program. The biggest clue or the biggest key to be successful is to find an advisor that you feel strongly connected to and that you feel that can really help you along the program. Okay, Renato?
Okay. Ele falou um ponto chave ali, pessoal. Connection with your advisor. O que é advisor? O orientador. Você tem que ter uma conexão muito forte com o teu orientador, especialmente quando você vem de fora. Por quê? Porque ele vai ser o teu orientador, a tua família, o teu orientador de como morar no país e a pessoa que você vai atrás para resolver todos os seus problemas. Mas aqui nesse slide ele apresentou as 3 possibilidades que existem quando você vem para cá. Você pode vir para um MS, Master Degree, um mestrado, para um doutorado, que é o PhD, ou você juntar e fazer os 2 programas juntos. O meu amigo Cláudio Brisman, ele fez isso. Ele veio do Brasil para cá para fazer o mestrado, uniu os 2 e em 5 anos ele saiu com mestrado e doutorado. O mestrado, como vocês sabem, torna, mesma coisa no Brasil, tem aulas, vai representar uma tese, torna 2 anos e meio. Doutorado, 4 anos e meio, mesma coisa, tese, mas tem que fazer uma dissertação. O programa mestrado e doutorado junto é um programa que a universidade está preferindo porque demanda maior comprometimento. Então, em vez de ter um investimento financeiro para desenvolver a tua pesquisa no mestrado, sem saber se você vai dar continuidade, ela sabe que você vai estar com ela por mais tempo, então tem um maior aporte para você desenvolver o teu trabalho. Tem algumas regras específicas que você tem que ser definidas com o seu orientador, mas se tem a possibilidade também que, se você veio para cá e no ano número 1, número 2, olha, não quero continuar, não quero fazer doutorado, se for PhD, você pode ficar só no mestrado. Mas então seria muita vantagem, se você quer ir para a vida acadêmica, para a pesquisa, combinar os 2 em 5 anos, aí sair com mestrado e doutorado.
Thank you very much. And I don't know, how many of you are fans of Star Wars?
Pessoal, quem aqui gosta de Star Wars?
Yeah, I know. I guess a few, I guess, but I always make the joke that the relationship between a student and their advisor is similar to what they joke or what they mention in Star Wars as the Jedi Master and the Padawan learner. It gets closer than just a teacher, right? Mm-hmm. Because you spend a lot of time thinking and a lot of time together, then it goes beyond that relationship of just teacher to student. Absolutely. And that's why it's very important to select somebody that you feel very comfortable with.
Ele quis usar o exemplo de Star Wars porque a conexão entre o mestre Jedi e o aluno dele tem que ter uma conexão forte com o seu orientador. Tanto que a Marina, que veio para cá agora, ela veio com uma orientadora brasileira, que ela já conhecia.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so moving along. So let's say that you've already found a possibility, or through your network now you found a way or a position that you are interested. And in fact, let me show you here. I think I have an example here. Yeah. Okay, this is one that came out recently. And again, it might not be your field, but many of them are similar. This is from Auburn University, and this is the Department of Biosystems Engineering. Okay, and it explains what it is. It says the department at Auburn University is seeking applications for both master's or PhD, right? So right there, it tells you what. And they also tell you the position can start as early as spring 2021, which is fast, right? And I'll explain why, because of the timing. That means your application needs to be submitted now because it takes several months, especially for international students, for the paperwork to be processed. And then on top of that, then once everything is in perfect status, then you need to obtain a visa, which takes sometimes a couple of months. And when they are talking about early spring, they are talking January. right? So just around the corner. So very, very, very fast. Then they said what the responsibilities will be, and it says the successful candidate will focus on precision phenotyping of poultry biomechanics and behavior using computer vision and deep learning. Now, this sentence already tells me that this program is most likely associated with a grant that this group had, because there is a very specific idea that the person will pursue, okay? And again, I'll come back more to that when we talk about funding, but that means that if you say yes and you apply and are admitted, it's not that you're going to change your mind and then try to do something else. That would not happen. So you have to keep that in mind. Then the next, they go into the qualifications, and it says earned by a system, biological, agriculture, engineering, and other fields. And here, this is important. And because I see many international students sometimes making a mistake here. If your field of expertise does not connect to this particular explanation, don't apply, because you will be rejected very quickly. Okay, they are looking for somebody that is trained on these particular fields, and you have to kind of fit well. Now, that said, some people might have training that is in multiple areas, and you might connect peripherally to this, in which case it might be possible. A long shot, but you have to make the case on how you connect here. Okay, that's the bottom line. Then we go into the credentials. They ask about the GRE, okay? And I'll talk about that more, but that's a test. That's a general test that a lot of universities require, not everybody. But the next one is required by everybody, especially if your first language was not English, then the TOEFL will be required. And here my recommendation is not just pass the test. You need a 79 in that test. You want to do the best possible job here, because that also increases your chances of getting better funding. And then they go strong oral and written communication skills. Don't be surprised, at least in my department, which is entomology, is studying insects. Then we interview the candidates now using Zoom. And we ask the candidates at some point in time, talk in English. And if you don't have enough oral skills, then you will not be even given the opportunity to apply, or you will not be accepted. Again, here they talk specifically about the experience that they require. If you don't have all of these, again, don't apply, because they will reject you. Now, what happens if from all of these you have 3 and not the other 3? Well, maybe then you can make your case, right? But you have to fit well with your experience and with your education into their request that they are putting out. If you do not, then don't try it, because you will be rejected very quickly. Then this alludes to some of the funding. Usually students receive a monthly stipend. It's like a salary. Now, we don't call it a salary because there are differences in benefits that you receive depending on that. But basically, it's an allowance that every month you will receive, that you will use to pay for your living expenses. A tuition waiver, because international students, when they are paying themselves, they have to pay really high fees. And so there is a tuition waiver. And it's very common that you will have that the department will pay for some health insurance, uh, sometimes in total or at least partially. Here at Ohio State, by rule, we provide about 85% of your health insurance. And then they say, all right, so what do you need to do to apply is to send your CV, copies of test score, that usually means transcripts, or any other. For example, some areas will require licenses, and you have to submit those. One word of advice, because I will not go into a lot of detail on this. Your CV, your curriculum vitae needs to be perfect. If you have any grammatical mistakes or any mistakes there, then that diminishes your application really big time, because everybody knows that that's the one document, this document and another that I'm going to mention, are the ones that you have full control. If you don't pay attention to that, then they will say how this person could pay attention to research. Renato.
Can you share that one with me?
Yes, just tell me when to go down.
No, share that file.
Yes, I'll send you that.
Okay. Or if you want to just upload to the chat group here, it will also work.
Okay.
A pessoa, ele colocou, ele exemplificou, né, como seria um application que está pedindo por candidatos. O que ele enfatizou ali nas responsabilidades, ele viu ali no último parágrafo, the successful candidates will focus on precision phenotype of poultry. Ali ele viu que, como é uma área específica, é uma área característica que existe um financiamento. Então, o que ele sugeriu? Aplica para a área que você está relacionado. Não aplique se você não tem os requerimentos. Aí tem também, tipo, se viu o GPA. GPA seria uma média, pessoal, da sua nota durante a graduação. 3? Porque aqui vai de 0 a 4. Aí existe uma conversão. A universidade faz uma conversão para nós que vai de 0 a 10 no Brasil. Eu tive que fazer isso para o meu mestrado. Você tem que fazer o TOEFL e o Canos falou, vá o melhor possível no TOEFL, porque isso vai mostrar também a tua credibilidade. O Vinícius falou, tem calculadora online de GPA. Obrigado, GPA. Obrigado, Vinícius. Canos, can you please go down a little bit? Você vai passar por uma entrevista ao vivo, então tua comunicação em inglês tem que ser boa, senão eles não vão investir um dinheiro, um financiamento em você. O que ele comentou que esse programa lá no começo é para na primavera de 2021, o que é um período muito curto, porque você tem que lidar com visto e toda a situação do programa. Então, normalmente, eles dão um prazo maior. Can you keep going down, please? Dentre os requerimentos, as experiências que pediram ali, foram listadas 6. O Canas falou, se você tiver 3, já vale. Ali na experiência que está pedindo, né? Se você tiver 3 dos requisitos, você pode até negociar os outros. Como assim negociar? Se tiver um excelente inglês, um excelente CV, currículo vitae, tiver uma excelente GPA e não tiver todos os outros requerimentos, aí você tem barganha para negociar, digamos assim. Aí o Canas mandou para nós ali no chat, pessoal, esse announcement, né, da universidade. Salvem, por favor, para vocês terem como referência. Pessoal, estou sentindo falta das perguntas de vocês.
Yeah, very good. And I just added the file to the chat box. Again, this is just an example, and you will see similar ones in from other fields. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So then, going back to the requisites, and this is one that is not new, but I'm going to emphasize. You need to get great grades or really good grades in your BS program. We call that a grade point average or GPA. So that means you have to study hard in your BS years. There is no way around this one. Most programs will not accept people if you have less than 3.0. I know that might be different in your system, but it equates to about, I think it's about 83% over 100, something like that.
Okay. Média de 8.3.
So yeah, so it's 3.0 on a 4.0 grade, okay? But that means you have to get good grades, and I know because I have received so many requests from students from many universities saying, yeah, but I have a ton of experience. Great, but again, the best body of evidence that you can do well is your GPA. Now it's true. Let's say you graduated with a low GPA and then you went to a job and then you excel at your job, then yes, maybe you can make the case, but it's difficult, okay? Because again, remember that in many universities, you are competing against students, not just from the US, but from all over the world. And again, competition gets really, really tough.
Dr. Canas, we got a question over there from Paulo Victor.
Go ahead.
So he asked, he heard of you saying about LinkedIn and also about curriculum vitae. are both the same thing, or those are different things that you have to have?
Very good. Those are different things, but are related. For example, the CV is a document that you usually prepare. The norm is you prepare it in a word processor like Word, and then you prepare it as a PDF, and you send it as a PDF because it's easily read by anybody. However, when you go to LinkedIn, you basically can take each of those elements from your CV and develop your LinkedIn profile. So that becomes your like electronic CV.
Excelente pergunta, Paulo. Ele falou então que são coisas distintas, mas relacionadas. Você vê aquele lá que você vai fazer no documento Word, botar a fotinho lá e salvar em PDF e enviar no arquivo. O LinkedIn na rede social que você vai montar o teu LinkedIn de acordo com o teu CV, colocando todas as experiências.
Correct. And so, yes, so as I was saying, you study hard, then you build your CV, going into your question. How do you build up your CV? It's not just about getting good grades. As I was telling you, let's say you work at a university that allows to do research projects. Well, great, get involved, do one like this in collaboration with others. Then you can enter that into your CV. Go give presentations at a meeting. Then that is another entry in your CV and so on. That's how you build that. Another thing that you will be requested to provide are transcripts, and at least initially when you are applying, then you can use unofficial transcripts. Usually you can get PDF copies or copies of your transcripts from your institution, and you can send those for people to see, okay? Because people will want to, especially, they will want to see if you have gotten good grades on core subjects. Just to give you an idea, in entomology, we want to see good grades in chemistry, biochemistry, some good grades in math, obviously ecology and similar, okay? The other thing that people don't recognize that we take into consideration and goes along with the GPA is the university reputation. Interestingly enough, at least in my university at Ohio State, we have lists based on country of the very best universities. And we know which ones are the toughest ones. So for example, it might not be the same thing when a student comes with a 3.0 from a really tough, really good university that ones that has a 3.3, for example, okay? So again, reputation of the university is important, okay? And as we say, is the body of work. Then we go into other tests, the TOEFL and GRE. I'll start with the TOEFL because this is required by everybody here in the US. Especially if your language is not English, then you will be required to take this test. And this is an English test that takes several hours to do. They have even a section where you talk back into a recorder, and then some person, when they evaluate your exam, then they take a look at that. Now I can tell you, the oral part was developed in response to people in Asia that paid advisors to help them train for this specific test. And they were really getting excellent grades on the written test, but when they came here to the US, they could barely speak. And so now there is a section where you have to talk, and you cannot fake talking. And so if you cannot, I mean, just with your pronunciation, we can tell if you've received training or not. Okay. And don't take this out in like you just decide, all right, I'm going to apply today, so I'll take it next month. No, this is one exam that you have to prepare and you have to study unless you are bilingual. And even if you are bilingual, there are a lot of rules and things that you have to be mindful about. So study. I've seen that at least people from Latin America, they need to study maybe 3-4 months at a good pace to get good grades on this exam. Okay. Then the GRE is another test, but this one doesn't test your English. There is a portion that tests your English, but there is a bigger portion that tests your basic knowledge of mathematics, a little bit of understanding graphics, and so on. The English part is very difficult. Now, the good news is that for years, universities complained that the GRE was never a really good predictor of success for students. So many universities, including mine, have gone away from requiring the GRE. So many programs do not require the GRE, but some do. So be mindful about that. And again, you need to prepare a lot for taking these tests.
Because
Yes.
we got a question, pergunta espetacular. Aline, she is probably being in the United States pretty soon to by the Ohio program, the same that I did.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
she actually might be in Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
So, but she made a fantastic question. I never thought about that. So it is possible that you are, in her case, working as an intern, so doing internship, and take classes of the master's or the PhD program as like a special student. We call special student here in Brazil. We can do that. You can, for instance, work full time in a company and take one or two classes as a special student. You're not enrolled in the full time program, but you can take the class. Is that possible?
Unfortunately, not anymore. It used to be possible many years ago, but one of the problems that happened is many universities starting to look into that, and what happened is uh, special students, in many cases, they were not being enrolled as normal students. And since they were not being enrolled, then basically they were not paying to be enrolled on an academic program. And that's the biggest difference, that now the requirement in many universities like Ohio State is that, yeah, you could take classes, but then you have to pay for them, okay? And the classes are pretty expensive, okay? And so that's one thing that sometimes, unfortunately, that doesn't work as before. Now, there are some special cases, okay, in which maybe your company would allow you to do this and then might give this as a benefit to you, that they might pay for you to take some classes. Maybe there is a grant or an agreement between the company and the university, and that might be possible. But it's not like, it doesn't happen every time.
I
Renato.
suppose Aline, the one that made the question, she's here, she's working, and she rose enough money to afford one or two classes.
Mm-hmm.
And she enroll only in one or two classes?
That's an excellent question. She can enroll in as many as she wants. However, here is the point. Because she's on an internship, there are certain requirements that she has to fulfill on the internship. And the key here is that she has to have a conversation with her supervisor to ask, first, for permission to take the class, and secondly, how much time can she devote to this class. Okay.
But
Now,
on this case,
uh,
the supervisor from the company or from the university?
both,
Both.
because and is she working at a company, or is she working with Ohio State?
She working as an intern for a
Right, but
company.
I'll explain why I asked that question, because you can be an intern in either. You can be an intern in a company, or you can be an intern at the university.
In a company, it's a greenhouse
Okay.
in
Yeah.
Columbus.
Yeah. In that case, then I guess she could do it alone, because she also need to tell the supervisor. But the key here is that class cannot interfere with the work that she does, and you will see why in a moment. Because she needs to do a great job at her internship, so that she can get a really great recommendation from her supervisor.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. And in that case, what my recommendation would be, you should be really clear about the demands of both your job as an intern and the class. So my recommendation is always start with one class to see how do you fare, or how do you administer your time before you even attempt to take more.
Okay.
Okay, so start slow, get used to the system, and then take it from there. Okay. And obviously in this case, the great thing is that then by being enrolled in a class, then you show that you can take a class in English, right? If you do well on your GPA, that also provides more information to whoever is going to review your application that you can do well in a program. So it's an excellent idea, although sometimes it gets costly. Okay?
Allow me to translate a little bit. Então,
Mm-hmm.
no caso, eu perguntei se a Aline, independentemente, por si só, ela poderia fazer aulas enquanto trabalha. Ele falou que tinha essa possibilidade, mas agora não tem, porque os alunos que já estão no programa, eles não gostam porque estão pagando caro pela matéria. Eu perguntei, tá, mas e se ela puder pagar a matéria? Aí ele falou que poderia, desde que a aula que ela está tendo não vai interferir com a performance dela no trabalho. E seria uma excelente maneira dela estar na universidade e enganjar para o mestrado. Então, Aline, se você conseguir acumular dinheiro suficiente para pagar uma matéria por si só, você tem essa possibilidade. Now we got another good question, Dr. Canas. Do you mind go ahead and reading because it is in English?
Let me check because I don't have the chat box open, but I'm about to do that.
Okay.
All right, here I have it.
Yeah, from Leticia.
Yes. What do I take into consideration to choose the combination of MS and PhD? How I separate MS and PhD in this option? That's the key. It's not separate. It's one thing. It wouldn't be even called MS or PhD. It will be called PhD. Okay? Because basically what you do is you go into the same field for a longer period of time, and then you do a dissertation that is more in depth than what you would do separately on a master or a PhD. And that's why it's a big commitment, and you have to be sure that that's the area that you want to specialize on.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So coming back to this, then the next element is something called the letter of intent. Many programs require you to write a letter saying why you wanna come to a particular program. And this is a very key document because it's the one that in your CV are two that you control fully. Obviously the CV depends on what you've done. So you cannot just add things because you want to. It's what you've done, right? It reflects your experience. But the letter of intent is the one that you can write whatever you want, right? Now, it varies by country. In the US, we really don't want to see a lot of your, for example, your childhood experiences that maybe led to you becoming a scientist. Unless these are absolutely unique, then that's not what we want. What we want is for you to connect how the experience, the professional experience that you had from your classes to maybe a thesis, maybe a project, really connect you to what you're going to do for the next 2 or 5 years. And how do you do that? To do this, that's where you really need to establish a connection with the professor that you are applying, that has the lab where you are applying. And so that's why you need to establish or connect to that professor even before you apply. And this comes back to what I mentioned to you about the network, where you find an opportunity, you start talking to a professor, and then you introduce yourself to them, you find out what they do in their labs, and then that should be the information that you use to prepare that letter. It's very important because we want to see a good match between your experience, what your training has been, your preparation, and the job that you will be doing in the next 2 to 5 years. Then the CV, as I mentioned before, please make no mistakes. Have many eyes look at it, people that you trust, okay? Always, for example, each society has its separate nuances about how to write a CV for that particular area. So find from other professionals what is a preferred CV format and then use that, okay?
Would you have one to share with us?
I don't right now, but I can send you one, Renato.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Then letters of reference, these are absolutely key. These will be written by 3 people that you trust that can explain how do you fit to this experience. Now, these are tricky because in your CV, you will write, okay, so maybe I took these classes or maybe I did this research project and so on. So the expectation is that we will get letters from people that are closer to you. So that means your primary advisors or your primary supervisors. If you do not, that raises some flags. For example, just to give you an idea, when I am trying to pursue a student to recruit that can come to my lab, I will go to the letters of reference and I will compare that to the CV and see, is this the major advisor of the student that did this project? If it is not, I will most likely find out who that person is and maybe give a call to that person. And maybe you didn't get along to that with that person, and that's really bad. Because as soon as I start talking to that person, they'll say, well, I don't like him because they didn't do a good job. So you have to be very careful about that. Now, as the letter of reference, and also you have to be careful when you request them. For example, I always tell my future students is find a person that you can talk to and say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm applying to Ohio State, to the lab of Dr. Cañas, and this is what I want to do. And my experience is in this CV, and this is the letter I intend to use. Why? Because with that information, that person can write a really good letter that connects all those elements. Unfortunately, I've seen this in many parts of Latin America, that people that sometimes write letters, they only say, oh yes, I know this person, I knew him for 5 years and he was a great student, period. That letter is not worth it, okay? That letter will not say anything, and the first thought that comes to mind on a committee when we see a letter like that, oh, this person didn't even take the time to write a good letter. So they didn't care about them. So very important to develop those relationships so that those letters could be really, really good. Renato.
Okay. I will translate and then I'm going to go back with another question that popped up over here. Então, pessoal, primeiro com o GPA que a gente falou, né, ele seria, para nós que trabalhamos com 0 a 10, seria em torno de 8.3. Esse não foi meu forte para o mestrado. Essa definitivamente não era a minha área, que eu tinha o melhor, que não foram as notas. Mas eu já estava aqui, eu já conhecia o Canas, então, igual ele falou, eu substituí o meu GPA, que não era dos melhores, pelo trabalho que eu já fazia. Né? Por isso que ele soube que ele poderia confiar em mim. Então, você vai fazer uma tradução do teu histórico escolar, que cada universidade tem uma política. A UEPG, para quem é da UEPG, fez a tradução do meu. Então, cada universidade vai na reitoria e solicita, eles já sabem fazer isso. A reputação da tua universidade é extremamente importante. Ele falou que ele tem uma lista das universidades brasileiras. Por exemplo, provavelmente a Exalc está no top da lista. Se você tiver, vamos dizer, uma nota de 7.5 da Exalc, e tiver uma nota aí de 9 de uma universidade que está no primeiro ano de formação da primeira turma, não pesa tanto quanto um 7 da Exalc, entendeu? Agora, o TOEFL, igual ele falou, você tem que estudar aí no mínimo de 3 a 4 meses e tem também uma apresentação oral. Por quê? Porque a gente percebeu que o pessoal da Ásia ia muito bem na parte escrita do TOEFL, mas chegava aqui nos Estados Unidos e não falava nada. Isso era muito desagradável. Então, tem que ter a parte de comunicação visual, oral também, que faz a entrevista, que é eliminatória, obviamente. A letter of intent seria, no caso, uma carta que você vai falar sobre você. Ele falou, ele não quer saber como você fez, não. Ele quer saber por que você vai para o Brasil, você é relacionado com o trabalho que ele faz. Então, você carta, você vai conhecer para ele que é vantagem para você. O orgulho que conversou com o coordenador, ele quer falando uma coisa mais base, mas eu acho que ele está vendo o pessoal explicar isso, entendeu? Por isso que ele estava fazendo. Então, nessa letter of intent, você está sob controle dessa letter of intent, ou seja, ela tem que estar perfeita, porque eles sabem, esse documento foi feito por você. Se você considera gramaticais, você vê, sem nenhum cada referência. Se você tiver cada referência de um metador, pegar a referência muito melhor se inscrever com essa referência é o mesmo teu orientador que você colocou no teu currículo vitae que está trabalhando com você. Está travando eu?
Zardo, era você, mas parece que melhorou.
Bom, eu estava só traduzindo o que ele falou. O principal é ter sua carta, a carta de recomendação do seu orientador, do seu orientador, a carta de recomendação e uma carta de recomendação, ok? Vinícius, você falou que tinha uma pergunta, você quer fazer a pergunta oral ou vai digitar?
Yes. Hello, Luis. I have a question. First of all, thanks for many information that you presented. I would like to know how can I work in the university, because I applied a program of academic mobile, and I'm go out of Brazil and go to USA. But this program of my university doesn't have financing. So what could I this case, because the difference of Campbell is higher?
Yes, excellent question. And my recommendation is, unfortunately, as it is, there are some universities that will accept you in the programs, but without funding. The cost is too great and too much for you to make that commitment. My recommendation to you is to find another university or find another program that actually provides with opportunities for assistantships or fellowships. The cost is too much to bear alone. I mean, I know some students in many countries are able to pay for those programs, but it's very rare, okay? And there are some funding opportunities out there, sometimes from your own country. I'll mention one that comes to mind. Renato.
Ele perguntou, por exemplo, se ele poder, he asked, for instance, if he could work in the university, or, perhaps some students, do they work at Walmart, McDonald's, Burger King, or Chipotle? If he be like a part-time worker, he can afford the classes?
Too difficult, because the cost for a foreign student that doesn't have fee waivers is close to, even in a public university like Ohio State, we're talking about $30,000 a year minimum. And that's correct. Yes, because it's about, I would say maybe 12 or so, maybe 14 for the tuition and fees. And then we're talking about your cost of living, right? If we put all that together, then we're talking about that much money.
Okay.
So it's not feasible to do that way.
Luis.
Yes.
What do you know of work no campus in the Ohio State?
Basically, the assistantships are exactly that. You basically work to fulfill your program. And I'll explain more of that when we go into the funding part. But that comes with the acceptance to the program. For example, when you get accepted to a master's or a PhD research degree, then that stipend that you receive is the pay that you get to do the job. And this is also associated with your visa. Your visa clearly will say you are authorized to study at Ohio State and be an assistant or an associate student that receives a stipend, but you cannot work on any other area. I know some students, because sometimes the pay is not enough, or sometimes they want to have a little bit more money, they go and work in probably not Burger King and McDonald's, but because they will want to see your work authorization documents to do that, and they will not accept you. But they sometimes try to work in other areas and get paid in cash. It is a huge risk, because if anybody finds out, then basically you lose your assistantship, and then most likely you get deported.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
That's serious.
Yeah, it's gotten really serious, and usually people are not pursuing students that I know for a fact there are some that have done that in the past, but it's a huge risk because sometimes, as I said, it's not that everybody's looking for you, but just to put an example that I have seen happen, you get mad with somebody and that person gets mad at you, and the first thing they do is they call somebody to say that you are illegally working somewhere, and that's how it starts.
Yeah, thank you. I believe that my visa will be J1, J1.
Yes.
So
Well, it depends. It depends. It could be J1 or it could be F1. If you're coming just to study, most likely will be an F1. If you come as an intern, then it will be a J1.
thank you. You said that you know of universities of Brazil. Yep.
Yes.
Do you know the Wayne University State Maringá?
I've heard of it, but I mean, Brazil is so big and has so many universities that I would not know all of them. And so that's why, as I was saying, my university keeps a list of universities that are well regarded in Brazil. And we usually go to, there is an internal document that we have by country where we can go find that out. But I can tell you, Renato mentioned Zalki is one. We have agreements, for example, with University of Sao Paulo, Lavras University, and others.
What the university, for example, Ohio, consider in a University of Brazil this note of Mac or the science production?
All of the above. And usually each country has their own rankings, and we use those obviously because each country knows their own universities the best. But we also, there are other areas of expertise that we can evaluate at the world level. And for example, if we're talking about research, then is the amount and quality of publications that that university produces in many other aspects. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Okay, if there are no more questions, then I'll continue on here.
Please.
Okay, I'll be quick on this one. I've been mostly talking about research-based programs where, as I told you, there will be associated with an assistantship where we will pay you to work doing the research that will become your thesis or your dissertation. It is usually associated with a grant, an associateship or a fellowship. Now, what is a grant? For example, in my case, I have a lab. My university only pays me my salary and gives me a space, in this case, my office, and maybe access to space in the greenhouse in the field. Everything else, I have to find money to pay for. And the way we do it is we compete with other scientists in the US to get grants. Basically, we submit an application with an idea that if the funding agency likes, then they give us money to do the research. In that money, then we usually provide allocations to hire students. And that's what we pay the student from. And that means that to be successful with that grant, I have to accomplish the goals of the project that I proposed. That's why if I hire a student, that student can only work on that area. He cannot change his mind because he or she cannot change their minds, because if they do, I cannot continue to have them in my lab. They have to move on to another lab and then they lose their funding, okay? And so it's important to understand that when you have acceptance of these offers, then that you cannot change your mind and go to a different area or a different program, unless that other program is willing to provide you with funding equivalent to what you had before, okay? And again, there are rules, even like, for example, when you come, your visa will be associated with my program. If you decide to switch, that other program will have to do the paperwork to do the transfer. It is not that easy. So you have to be mindful about that. There are some master programs that are what we call professional masters. There is an example that we call the Masters of Plant Health. In this case, there will not be a thesis or a research project associated with it. And then they might not be associated with a grant, which means that there might not be a lot of funding associated, so you pay yourself. But there might be other ways to generate funding to do these programs. These programs are designed for the professional that maybe already has a job, wants to learn more, maybe get another degree that will allow them to expand his capabilities on his company or her company, and so on. So they are a little different, but you need to understand the difference when you are applying to these positions. I'll stop there.
O que o Canas falou, a diferença entre pesquisa e programa profissional. A pesquisa, no caso, o professor vai te contratar. De onde vem esse dinheiro? O professor aplica para projetos e o governo vem financiar. Então, quando ele te contrata, ele está te contratando para esse programa. Então, o teu visto que você vem aqui para o país está relacionado com esse programa. Por isso que você não pode mudar de um projeto para outro projeto. Agora, o mestrado profissional é o que eu falei, é o que eu fiz, que é um mestrado que ele não tem o financiamento do governo, que você vai pagar por si só a mensalidade, ou a empresa que você vai trabalhar vai pagar. Here, those requirements that you showed to us are the same for a postdoctorate program. So the person already has a PhD and wants to do a postdoctorate.
No, it's very different. Postdoctorate, because people will not take classes, then you're not required to enroll on classes. So it's very different. So that will be more similar to applying to a job. And again, the biggest difference is, in this case, then when we have a postdoctoral position, then we want to receive really good recommendations. So yes, there will be a CV, there will be, usually we will request transcripts, and then we will request letters of recommendation, okay? But there won't be an application to enter a department per se. Usually in this case, then it will be only the faculty member that will be making the decision. So it's very different. And in a sense, it's a little easier in the sense that you don't have to go through a committee, but the competition is pretty big.
Ok. Então é um pouco diferente porque você não faz aulas, mas você passa por aplicação, pelo processo, e você vai passar por um comitê, pois a competição é muito grande. Dr. Canas, I had arranged with you 1 hour. However you want to conduct this meeting will be up to you.
Yeah, I'll probably go finish and I move quickly in here. This is the professional program that I had mentioned to you before. I'll probably, let me see. Yes, I will talk just the next 2 slides about funding and timing because they pertain to the subject. I will not touch the part of internships. I know several of you are in internships, and I will just say that internships are a great way to develop that network and that experience that allows you to really be competitive for master's and PhD positions. So it's a great idea. Many people initially think that it's a waste of time because then you will be behind 1 or 2 years. I completely disagree. This is some of the best time that really gives you a lot of experience that will make you competitive in some of these positions, okay? So all right, funding very quickly. As I said, there are assistantships and associateships that they pay a stipend. This is a monthly amount of money that you get paid. Fee waivers, that means you don't need to pay for those fees that are very high. They pay for health insurance. And as I mentioned before, they are associated with our research grant most often. Then there are fellowships. These fellowships are given to the individual, not to the faculty member, as opposed to grants. So for example, if one of you applies to a fellowship, that fellowship is yours. And then you can decide to which lab you're going to work with. In that case, you bring that money with you. As you can imagine, these are highly competitive, and only the very best students can apply to this. Just to give you an idea, when we're talking about GPA, then we're talking about people at the sometimes the 90th percentile. So really, really good grades. We're talking about to enter grad school, we're talking about 3.0 or better. To get a fellowship, at least here in Ohio State, we're talking about 3.7 or better. So that's really, really high, okay? So you can make the calculations to figure out what that is, but it's really high. And the competition is really fierce because, as you can imagine, a lot of people from the US apply for these fellowships, and a lot of people from overseas applies for these fellowships. It's not very common that fellowships are awarded to international students, but it happens, okay? And then this is another. There could be funding that comes from your country. And for example, we right now are working together with 4 universities in Brazil, and this is Ohio State. There are other arrangements with other universities in a program funded by Brazil called the Cape Spring Project, or the Cape Spring Grant. And this is awarded to particular universities, and they have funding that sometimes allows for students to come here to the US, not for a full degree, but I think to do maybe 1 or 2 years as part of their degree. And you have to kind of ask, basically. And as I said, then the 4 universities that I recall are University of Sao Paulo, the University of Rio Grande do Sul, then what is the other one? Well, there are 2 other ones. It'll come back to me, but these are universities that have that funding, and they have listed Ohio State as a potential institution. That doesn't mean that there are other institutions or other universities that are associated with other US universities, but you have to ask. You have to ask at your own university what contacts they have and for these opportunities. I'll stop there.
Ok, pessoal, ele explicou os tipos diferentes de financiamento que você pode ter o funding, né, o financiamento da universidade, no caso, que vai eliminar fees. Os Estados Unidos tem muita fee, fee para tudo quanto é lado, que vai ajudar a pagar o teu seguro de saúde, e a grant, que é a pesquisa em si. E tem a fellowship, que o indivíduo, no caso o Vinícius, ele recebe o dinheiro para ele. Ele falou que isso é extremamente competitivo, é muito difícil. Para ter uma ideia, sem ter uma nota aí acima de provavelmente 9,5, né? Ele falou que é 3,7 de 4, né? E é muito difícil ir para a estudante internacional, mas é possível. O que é possível também que o seu país financie. Ele citou a CAPES, programas da CAPES, no caso eles financiam o Vinícius. Daí o Vinícius tem a maior barganha de escolher com qual programa que ele quer trabalhar, porque o financiamento vem para o Vinícius, não para o departamento dele, do caso do professor. All right?
Okay, great. And then the last thing that I'm going to mention is, let me see here, is the timing, when to apply. The best time to apply is in November and December. Our academic year is a little different than other countries. It starts in August and it ends up in May, with the summer again being another term that could go from May to August. So the full year would be from August to August. And so to be ready to enter in August, then usually you want to apply in November and December, because many committees get together in January and in February to award the assistantships and the fellowships. So basically that's when all the money is available. It is possible to enter, for example, here at Ohio State at many different times. You can enter in January and you can enter in May, but then during those times, there are less opportunities to get an assistantship or a fellowship. So the best time usually is November, December. Then that means that you have to take your time to get all those exams ready by the time that you are applying. You also need to understand or is the policy of your university to send transcripts because you want to make sure that they get there on time, I always recommend to apply to at least 3 different schools in the field that you are interested about, but that also means you have to have contacted professors at those universities, and then be realistic. Apply to those fields that you qualify for. Okay?
O Canas finalizou ali falando então de quando que aplicar, se vai aplicar em novembro, dezembro, para começar em agosto, que é quando começa o ano. Então vai ter, mas mantenha em mente, vai aplicar em novembro, dezembro, tendo já todo o material traduzido, o currículo CV pronto, os seus transcripts da tua universidade. Então, tenha teu material pronto para aplicar em novembro, dezembro. Aplique para várias escolas, no mínimo 3, eu diria, quanto mais melhor. E quanto mais você aplicar para o campo que você tem maior conhecimento, por exemplo, eu fiz 5 anos de extensão científica em fertilidade de solos, eu deveria aplicar para fertilidade de solos, porque mostra que você é um expert. Igual uma empresa, ela vai querer contratar quem vai demandar menos tempo de treinamento. O professor também, ele vai contratar quem já está familiarizado com a área. Dr. Canas, can you send a presentation to me?
Yes, I'll send you that presentation, and I'll say the last thing is I'm going to say the 4 universities that we have a very strong relationship with because of this program that I mentioned to you are the University of Sao Paulo, the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, Federal University of Paraná, and Federal University of Paraíba. We also have a strong relationship with the SALCI, as Renato had pointed out.
Pegar as universidades, pessoal. Exalc, Federal Rio Grande do Sul, Federal do Paraná, Federal do Paraíba, além da Cidade de São Paulo. Alguma pergunta antes da gente deixar o Dr. Canas liberá-lo? Dr. Canas, do you have any questions for this group?
No, I'm happy that you were here. I hope that the information is useful. We could talk even longer about all of these details, but at least hopefully I presented some of the key information that you could use for this. And thank you, Renato, for the invitation.
Well, thank you for taking the time, and we're extremely busy with everything you got going on. Appreciate you being here. Obrigado, pessoal. And thank you very much.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Dr. Canas, can you make me the host again, please?
Yes. Let me see here. Make host.
Okay, now I'm the host.
All right. Have a good night. See ya.
See you. Bye.
Thank you, Canas. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Very nice.
Beleza, pessoal. Muito obrigado pela presença de vocês. Tiver um público um pouquinho mais baixo hoje, talvez em função da quarta-feira. Mas foram respondidas as perguntas. Ficou alguma dúvida no ar que talvez eu possa ajudar?
Renato, tem uma dúvida que, na verdade, eu acho que você consegue me explicar também. Como você fez o mestrado aí, no meu caso, e no teu caso também, que, no caso, só que você estudou na UEPG, tanto graduação quanto mestrado. No meu caso, que eu fiz graduação em uma universidade, em uma faculdade, e o mestrado na UEPG. Conta, digamos, para tentar participar do mestrado aí, conta as notas da graduação ou a do mestrado? Ou ambas, no caso?
Tudo conta. Eu não lembro quanto que deu meu GPA, mas não era bom. Eu posso te garantir que não era bom. De matérias na faculdade que eu fui mal, genética, matemática, passei na beirada para não reprovar. Entretanto, no mestrado só tirei A. E uma coisa meio que compensou a outra, entendeu? Fez com que eu fosse aceito, porque estava sendo por outro mestrado. E o que para mim contou demais é que eu conheci o Canas. Então, ele sabia que ele poderia trabalhar comigo, e o meu caso, eu não recebi nenhum financiamento de ninguém. A minha empresa estava pagando. Então, como não tinha nenhuma pesquisa que eu estava desenvolvendo, não era um programa de financiamento da universidade, eu fiz as matérias que eu queria. Eu fiz matéria de finanças, matéria de gerenciamento de pessoas, matéria de entomologia. Então, porque eu não tinha um orientador que eu tinha que responder, né? ou até uma tese científica que eu tinha que elaborar uma pesquisa, era um mestrado profissionalizante que eu fiz. É um pouco diferente. Mas para responder a tua pergunta, junta as duas notas que vai ajudar, com certeza.
Obrigada.
Por nada.
Osardo, eu sei que nós já passamos do horário, mas eu acho que é legal falar para o pessoal qual processo nós fizemos aí antes de ontem para hoje. Eu vou tentar ser bem breve, não sei se você tinha programado outra coisa.
Pode falar, pode falar. Não,
Seguinte, pessoal.
Estamos aqui para isso.
Seguinte, pessoal, eu e o William, nós descobrimos ontem um edital da nossa universidade, né? Nós estudamos na UEM. E aí, porventura, o William abriu o e-mail aleatoriamente, que geralmente os e-mails da universidade a gente não dá muita atenção, né? Porque é mais programas que talvez não nos interessem. E esse nos interessou e foi muito bom. E aí a gente fez tudo na correria, mas é um programa de mobilidade acadêmica. Então é como se fosse uma graduação sanduíche, quando você tem essa possibilidade de eliminar matéria. E quando você não tem a possibilidade de eliminar matéria, você consegue ir para outro país, para outra universidade, fazer fazer as matérias que você quer, a hora que você volta, você continua onde você parou.
E agrega no currículo, né? Isso entra na sua grade.
E é um programa muito legal, e tem, tipo, a gente viu, né, várias universidades parceiras que tem parceria com a nossa universidade. E aí eu perguntei, né, pro Canas, porque nós aplicamos, né? Então, assim, a gente podia escolher 3 universidades, e aí uma das que eu escolhi foi Ohio, né? Então, por isso que eu perguntei algumas coisas. E aí a vantagem disso é que não tem a taxa para vocês, a taxa para estudar, no caso a mensalidade da faculdade não é isento. Só que daí o programa de local, tipo, seria, no caso, você teria que bancar tanto os outros tipos de custo, né? Tipo, desde alimentação e tudo mais. E aí é por isso que eu perguntei esse tipo de coisa, porque por mais que ficaria aí um valor, tipo, bem mais baixo, né? Porque não teria que pagar a universidade, fica um pouco, de certa forma, inviável também, porque o câmbio está meio complicado. Né? E é isso. Quer falar mais alguma coisa, William?
Não, acredito que seja isso. A gente fez tudo bem na correria, porque descobriu, mas deu certo. Aplicar e vamos ver o que vai dar. Né?
Ótimo, mantém a gente informado das respostas de vocês vão saber. O Canas falou ali $30 mil contando as matérias, né? Eu acredito que cada matéria sai em torno de $2.500 a $3.000. E aqui tem muita FII, pessoal.
Osardo, qual palavra você falou que tem muito o quê? Muito fio?
FII. Taxa. Muita taxa. Letícia, você tinha mais uma pergunta?
Sim. Sobre a minha pergunta que eu fiz, eu faria 2 dissertações ou somente uma? Quando faz a combinação de mestrado e pós-doutorado?
Uma. É a mesma pesquisa, mas daí a tua tese se transforma numa dissertação.
Tá. Mais desenvolvida no caso daí.
Isso, mais aprofundada.
Tá bom.
Tá quanto
Obrigada.
Grenal?
Ai, nem sei, eu tô aqui no quarto. Não consegui acompanhar.
Beleza, pessoal? Mais alguma pergunta? Muito obrigado, um grande abraço.